Hi, this is Erica, Vixen, Gavin, coming to you along with Chuck and Ed on TV Confidential. Here we go.
Ed Robertson, welcoming you back to TV Confidential, radio talk show about television that is happy to welcome award-winning director, writer, journalist, and author Burt Kearns. Most of you listening right now probably know Burt Kearns best for his work in nonfiction film and television, including creator and executive producer of Breaking the Ice sports documentary series currently seen on WeTV and the All Black channel. Burt has also produced many other series for such platforms as HBO, Bravo, and Reels, as well as, going a few decades back, the syndicated tabloid news series Hard Copy and A Current Affair. Burt's latest book, Shemp, that is Shemp with an exclamation point, Shemp not only takes a deep dive into the life and career of Shemp Howard, one of the original members of the Three Stooges, and in real life, the older brother of Moe Howard and Curly Howard, but debunks many myths about Shemp's career before and during the Three Stooges, and many myths about Shemp as a person, including many myths that were perpetuated by either Moe Howard or members of Moe's family. We'll get into all of that. We'll tell you where you can find Shemp in just a second. Burt Kearns, welcome to TV Confidential.
Hey, thanks for having me. And it's also great to hear a preview of my obituary.
I get that a lot from guests, but I want to give people as well-rounded a picture of who we're talking to, so that we can just dive into what it is you're here for. So
no, I appreciate it. You made me sound impressive. Thank you.
Okay. Also, speaking of impressive, our friend Chuck Harter is also here with us today. Chuck Harter, our resident music historian, resident Monkees historian, resident Elvis Presley historian, all-around entertainment phenomenon. As a matter of fact, this segment, folks, marks a mini reunion of sorts. Chuck worked with Burt Kearns many years ago on the highly acclaimed, well-received three-part series, I, Elvis, that aired on Hard Copy. Chuck, good to have you with us.
And nice to be here, and hello, Burt, and we will dive into Shemp Howard. And I'll start off with this. Anybody that hears this, get this book, Shemp, by Burt Kearns. It's excellent, and go out and buy one.
Shemp, exclamation point.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah.
Burt, what led you to take a deep dive into Shemp?
Well, I have a history of doing projects on performers with very interesting stories, but who the general public might not be aware of. People like Neil Innes from Monty Python and the Bonzo Dog Band, Chris Montez, a Mexican-American rock and roller who became a middle-of-the-road star thanks to Herb Alpert in the 60s. And when my kids were younger, they would say, "Dad, you've got to do a documentary on somebody that people have heard of." Then I wrote a book during the pandemic on the actor Lawrence Tierney. And I got a book agent, and we got that book sold, and the book got out, and the agent said to me, "Burt, you've got to do a project on somebody that people have heard of." So actually the first person that we came up with was Marlon Brando. 2024 had been the year of his centenary. It was 20 years since his death. And I wrote a book about Marlon Brando and his influence on popular culture today, on his 100th birthday. Following Marlon Brando. Who could follow Marlon Brando? Who has the bisexual charisma and the intensity of Marlon Brando in Hollywood, but Shemp Howard? And it turned out that when we started this book, there had been lots of books about Moe, Larry, Curly. There's even books on Joe DeRita and Joe Besser. There hadn't been a book about Shemp Howard. So it seemed like a great subject to dive into. And I dived into it and found a lot of surprises.
I have two takeaways from the book. I think at least one of them is going to touch on one of your surprises, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. To me, Burt, the real story of your book on Shemp Howard is debunking all of the myths about Shemp that obscure the fact that he was immensely talented and far more versatile than people give him credit for.
Yeah, see, that's it. I didn't go into this book with any sort of preconceived notions. See, I liked the Three Stooges when I was a kid. I got home from school in the early 1960s. I lived in the New York area. I watched Officer Joe Bolton on WPIX with the Three Stooges show. He would show the Three Stooges. I'd sit there with my little brother. When the show was over, I'd hit my brother on the head with a hammer. My mother would yell at us because it was, not a good example. But I'm not trying to put anybody down by saying, I grew out of it. I moved on, through the 60s with, Cheech and Chong and Monty Python and George Carlin and learning about Lenny Bruce, etc. I'm not part of the Three Stooges fan base that's still very strong out there today. And one of the problems is that just about every book that's been written about any of the Three Stooges are written by people who are fans of the Stooges. And because of that, they go back to what can be considered the Bible. The Bible is a book called Moe Howard and the Three Stooges.
That's right.
Later released as I Stooged to Conquer. It's Moe Howard's autobiography. He began writing it in the years near his death. He died in 1975 at 77. He died before he finished the book, and his daughter finished it for him. The problem with the book is that it's full of a lot of inaccuracies. That's what I found going through it. Digging into Shemp's life, I'd see Moe write about a certain instance, and I'd say, wait, that doesn't match up with that's not real, that's not true. And then as I got deeper into it, I saw the way that Shemp was being characterized in Moe's book. Shemp was Moe's older brother by 2 years, although Moe, in his book, put down Shemp a lot as an idiot, as a scaredy cat, as a bedwetter. I mean, imagine writing that about your older brother, calling him a bedwetter, etc. And I was sort of shocked by reading it. And as I dug through it, I found that a lot of the characterizations of Shemp are wrong or misguided because it all goes back to this, this book, this Bible, which, like many books like that, is fictional.
Shemp, exclamation mark. Shemp, the biography of the Three Stooges, Shemp Howard, by our guest Burt Kearns, available wherever books are sold through our friends at Rowman and Littlefield. You can also find it at Amazon.com, BarnesNoble.com, wherever books are sold online. More about Burt Kearns, BurtKearns.com, and Burt spells his first name B-U-R-T, BurtKearns.com. You just touched on my second takeaway from the book. This is something Chuck and I were talking about before we called you today, Burt. Moe does not come across well at all in the book. And for me as a reader, I will tell you, I was disappointed to see that, if only because I remember, I was like 9, 10 years old at the time when he made a number of appearances on the Mike Douglas show. And here he was, this diminutive old man. He still's got the Super Bowl haircut. But it was kind of cool, as a kid, it was cool to see him, who he was outside that character he played. And he seemed like a sweet old dude when he was on the Mike Douglas show. But reading just the way he characterizes his older brother, that was really disappointing for me to see.
Yeah, you have to remember, Moe outlived Shemp by about 20 years. He outlived his younger brother Curly by about 23 years or so. And again, the survivors write the history. Mm-hmm. And Moe, the Three Stooges had a resurgence in popularity in the 1960s after Screen Gems, who bought up all their old shorts from the 1930s on, started selling them for syndication on television. So the Three Stooges had an immense, reemergence in popularity and a new audience. Rather than, people who used to see the Three Stooges would go into a movie theater to see a James Cagney movie or a John Wayne picture, and before the picture you'd see a newsreel, and then you'd see a comedy short for about 15 minutes, and then you'd see the main feature. So adults were watching the Three Stooges through most of their career. Now suddenly, little kids like me, like other people, coming home from school and watching the Three Stooges, they had a whole new audience. And so they were making public appearances. They were making films for the first time. They had only, as the Three Stooges, I think they had only made 1 or 2 motion pictures in all their career. Everything else was shorts. And Moe would go out and tell his story. Now, you can always forgive these old guys when they're telling stories of show business and vaudeville. They're going to get dates wrong. They're going to get locations wrong, even names wrong. The problem with Moe was that he was inserting himself in situations that he wasn't in. You know, the most egregious I thought was that he tells a story of how, you know, the Stooges began with Shemp and Moe. They were two brothers. They went out. They did a vaudeville. They did a blackface act where they basically ripped off an African-American act and did their act. Not like you've ever heard of that in show business before. two white kids doing that.
Yeah.
They went on. They hooked up with an old friend of Moe's from childhood named Ted Healy. Ted Healy was a very popular vaudeville and Broadway entertainer, a song and dance man, a comedian, an MC. And he had an act where he had Stooges working for him. He had a big troupe around him, and among them they didn't call them Stooges at the time, but that's what they were. Moe and Shemp were just part of that group. What would happen is Ted Healy would be singing a song. Then he'd get interrupted by somebody from the audience. He'd call the guy up on stage. They'd do a bit of a comedy routine. And then when it was over, Ted Healy would slap the guy in the face hard enough and loud enough that you could hear it in the last row of the balcony. That's what made it funny. If he just slapped him, you didn't hear that slap, it wouldn't be funny. That's basically the act that the Three Stooges carried on, through the decades. But what Moe tells the story is saying it was an unbroken chain from that first appearance. It was Moe and Shemp, and then somebody else was on board, got rid of them, and then one day Moe is sitting in a nightclub with Ted Healy in Chicago, watching this little guy with frizzy hair on stage sawing away at a violin and being really funny. And Moe turns to Ted. He writes this. Moe turns to Ted Healy and says, are you thinking what I'm thinking? You got to hire this guy. And of course it was Larry Fine, and then it became Moe, Shemp, and Larry. Well, I start digging into the actual facts of things and looking up, records and newspaper stories and from the trade magazines. Moe had quit the Three Stooges, had quit the Ted Healy Act in 1925 for about 3.5 years to sell real estate with his mother. And it was Shemp who was on the road with Ted Healy by himself, who was there when he discovered Larry Fine, who trained Larry Fine to take his own place in the act, because Shemp kept going solo, trying to find his own way in his own career. So there were little things like that throughout, aside from the fact that Moe put little denigrating things about his brother throughout. Because I think what Moe was doing was setting himself up in the public eye the way he was set up in the Three Stooges shorts. He was the leader. He was the guy dishing out the hits and the slaps. He said that. He said, that I was the smart one in the group. I was the one who took Ted Healy's place. I was the one dishing out the punches and the slaps and the pokes, and the other ones were just the idiots.
Shemp, S-C-H-M-P, ! Shemp, the biography of the Three Stooges, Shemp Howard, the face of film comedy, available wherever books are sold through our friends at Roman and Littlefield. You can also find it Amazon.com, where books are sold online.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to you by Salt River Therapy, a compassionate, confidential boutique therapy practice that offers quality therapies for individuals and couples, both in person in Brooklyn, New York, and virtually throughout New York State and New Jersey. Their specialties include anxiety, grief, low self-esteem, identity issues, and relationship challenges, while the mission of Salt River Therapy is to help you find your inner capacity for vulnerability, healing, and growth so that you can really understand yourself and your experiences, prioritize caring for yourself, and finally tackle the things that have been bothering you. The people at Salt River Therapy value being therapists who actually get you. They love connecting with clients who may be worried about being misunderstood or judged, or who might be afraid of change, or who aren't quite sure what's not working in their lives but are hoping to find clarity, build resilience, and figure out their way forward. Salt River Therapy accepts most New York Aetna plans and have sliding scale rates available. To learn more about what they do or to schedule a free phone consultation, visit saltrivertherapy.com, saltrivertherapy.com.
Hi, this is Johnny Whitaker, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
For a ready-made suit, he looks just like a bro bumble. Such style, such class. Believe me, I wouldn't know my own merchandise.
Figure it up, Shorty.
With pleasure.
About these duds, put them on a cuff, will you?
Cuff? Whose cuff? What cuff?
Your cuff, Shorty.
My cuff?
Play along with me, Shorty, and one of these days I'll let you make me nothing but custom-made suits.
Never mind that. The custom today is cash. You're not going to swing any pickaxe in my suit. Take it off.
More about Burt Kearns, our guest this hour, BurtKearns.com. Chuck?
Yeah, regarding Moe's book, Burt, yeah, I remember reading it, and then with your book showing what you just discussed. It's funny, in Moe's book, he's a little hard on young Jerome, but he's harder on Shemp. You know, he talks about Curly womanizing, and he worried about him, and he'd wake up until 3 in the morning when he yelled, "Swing it, coming home," and that kind of thing. Why do you think he was harder on Shemp than he was on Curly?
Well, I think, you know, there were 5 brothers. There were 2 older brothers who did not get into show business. Shemp was Moe's older brother by 2 years. Curly came, I think, about 6 years after Moe. He was the baby of the family. As a matter of fact, they called him Babe. Until Shemp married Gertrude Frank, whose nickname was Babe, so they changed Curly's nickname to Curly. But he was always known as the Babe of the family. I think there was a real, and you could see it, jealousy that Moe had, whether he was deliberate or not, whether it was subconscious, of his older brother. Because when you read Moe's book, he says from the time he was, 11 years old, he decided he was going to be an actor. He was going to be a thespian. He ran off to do plays on a riverboat. He would sit in the balcony of theaters and memorize the lines that the actors were saying. While Shemp was just sort of a natural, carefree, charismatic, very funny person from the beginning. And I think, and then also when you see, for instance, if you see the first film that the Three Stooges made, they weren't called the Three Stooges. They were working with Ted Healy on a film called Soup to Nuts in, I think, about 1930.
Right.
I'll get dates wrong, but the dates are correct.
No, that's it. That's it. That's it.
Shemp is undeniably the leader of the gang. He was a bit taller than Moe, and he was taller than Larry. He was very quick on his feet. He was good looking when he was younger. He didn't have turned into that great face that he grew into at the time. But he was younger. He was a great dancer. He was a great ad-libber. And I think Moe, if you know Moe, Larry, and Curly, Moe was Moe. Curly was this childish dervish. He was like the Belushi of the time, or Chris Farley, but add a little Jim Carrey in there. He would bark like a dog and spin on the floor. He was like a big kid. While Moe never had that range that Shemp had. Shemp was an actor. Shemp was a real person as opposed to the other Stooges. So I think Moe was jealous of his older brother, and any criticism he had of Curly was pretty spot on. I mean, Moe and Shemp were family men. They have decades-long marriages. I think Curly was married 3 or 4 times. He was a heavy drinker. He was a partier. He was a libertine. He was very much like a John Belushi type, the fat man who lives out his role off camera as well.
Well, and another thing, of the 6 Stooges, if you will, Shemp had the bigger career doing other things. Shemp was in many movies, and you bring this up, and you should speak on that when I'm done. In The Bank Dick, he's great as the bartender with W.C. Fields. He did a lot of different things. Do you think that also fueled Moe's jealousy in later years?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, Moe made a couple of pictures in later years. I think he had about 2 films that he appeared in just as Moe Howard, and he was still Moe. It was still, hey, look, there's Moe Howard. Shemp. Another thing we forget is we know the Three Stooges because those shorts that were shown from the 30s through the 50s showed up on television in the 60s, and there's still, there's Three Stooges channels on YouTube now and streaming. They're everywhere. But you kind of forget is that they weren't the only ones making these comedy shorts.
Right.
There were lots of others. Harry Gribben and Ben Blue and other people were making these shorts. So was Shemp as a solo performer.
Right.
In 1932, I think it was when he left the group. Moe says it was because he was afraid of Ted Healy and didn't like getting hit on stage. But if you look at the coverage of it, back in the day. It turns out that Shemp left because he wanted more money. He said to Ted Healy, I'm basically a co-star here. I want more money. And Healy said, well, I'm not paying you anymore. You're splitting the money with the other two, with Moe and Larry. So if you want more money, change the split with those guys. And when they wouldn't change the split, Shemp split. He went off to a solo career at Vitaphone, Vitagraph Pictures, and made comedy shorts that he starred in up until about 1937, when he moved to Hollywood and began a pretty successful career as a character actor. He appeared not only with W.C. Fields, where he was really, W.C. Fields told all the jokes at the bar. Shemp was the human figure. Out of all the cartoon characters in The Bank Dick, which is hysterically funny, Shemp was sort of the grounding force in that. He was an actor in that film. He was really good. He also appeared in with William Powell and Myrna Loy in one of the Thin Man movies. He appeared in a Charlie Chan picture. He appeared with John Wayne, Randolph Scott, and Marlena Dietrich in a picture. Made a couple of dead-end kid films, 5 films with Abbott and Costello. He had a really great career as a character actor who you could fit into any picture. It might be a role that would take him through the entire picture, or in some pictures he would just do one or two scenes, but he would always fit in. He was always Shemp, but he had different personas that he would put on. He would be the loudmouth lout, or he would be the comic gangster. He was the Runyon-esque gangster in a lot of pictures. He was the henpecked husband, the idiot. He always carried a pair of foggy glasses where he could perform as his blind routine or his nearsighted routine, which he appeared in several films like that. The one character that he didn't play in any of his solo pictures or appearances was the scaredy cat that he played in the Three Stooges, and that's the label that he's been affixed with, because we all know the Three Stooges. We didn't see those other shorts growing up.
That's right. Burt Kearns is on the line with us. Burt's latest book, Shemp, the biography of the Three Stooges, Shemp Howard, the face of film comedy, available wherever books are sold through Applause Books. Chuck Harter is with us. We hope you'll stay with us as we continue our conversation with Burt Kearns here on TV Confidential.
Who needs a vacation? Are you ready for an unforgettable getaway? Start packing your bags, because Branson, Missouri, the vacation and entertainment capital of the U.S., is calling your name. For just $99 per person, here's what you get. A full 3-day, 2-night stay in a luxury resort hotel. A delicious full breakfast buffet every morning you're here. And when you call right now, free show tickets worth up to $100. That's right, free show tickets to an award-winning show on us. You don't have to leave the country for an amazing vacation. You can drive or fly to Branson and have an incredible time. Whether you bring in the whole family or just planning a romantic escape, this trip is built for you. We guarantee you'll love Branson. This is not a timeshare. It's just an unbeatable vacation deal for only $99 per person. You book now, you can use your tickets anytime this year. You don't even need to know your travel dates to lock in the special price. Hurry, because this offer won't last long. Call our Branson vacation experts today.
800-435-1887. 800-435-1887. 800-435-1887. That's 800-435-1887.